Hello there and welcome back to the Net Report. Chris here, and today I am here to discuss the biggest winners in the 2023 NBA draft and give my thoughts on these selections. This draft was one of the weird ones in which we saw not a lot of star-studded trades. Many teams that were rumored to be shopping their picks ended up staying put, which led to a very interesting draft where I felt there were no major losers that are painfully obvious. However, I want to highlight the teams that I felt ended up winning the draft as a whole. Before we get started though, if you are new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy and want to see more NBA content. Starting with the most obvious winners in the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs, of course, drafting generational prospect in Victor Wembanyama. And this has been known since May. Since the draft lottery happened, the San Antonio Spurs would be the biggest winners in this draft class. They get Victor Wembanyama, who is just a generational talent, the best prospect since LeBron James back in 2003. He is a player we have never seen before. He is a 7'3" demigod who can shoot, handle the ball, be a defensive presence, block shots. He can just do it all, and he's really going to be in all NBA conversations in his rookie year. Everyone compares him to Tim Duncan, who of course was the last player to be on an all NBA team, being the first overall pick. And Victor Wembanyama truly has that potential, and the San Antonio Spurs hit it out the park, of course, with the most obvious pick probably in draft history. Spurs fans should be excited for Victor Wembanyama becoming a part of their organization, and the sky's the limit for this kid. Shout out to the San Antonio Spurs. Moving on to the next winners, and probably the biggest winners of the draft given their position and what they were thought to do with these picks. The Houston Rockets, with the number 4 pick, draft Amen Thompson, who just seems to have a ton of upside. There's obviously questions about his shot, but Amen Thompson's a very smart player. He's insanely gifted athletically. He'll be able to get to the rim with ease. He's insanely quick. He has a ton of playmaking upside and is probably one of the better playmakers in the draft as a whole. Obviously, like we said, there's shooting concerns, but on a potential basis, Amen Thompson has as much potential as almost anyone in this draft. So if he's able to really get that shot down, he can become a star in this league. So I really want to see the dynamic with him and Jalen Green playing off each other. I think that can be very good for Houston in the future. And I'm just excited to see Amen Thompson grow with the Rockets. And in one of the biggest shocks of this draft, Cam Whitmore slides all the way to 20 and ends up a Houston Rocket. Cam Whitmore was a player heading into this draft who was seen as the 5th best prospect, and he slides all the way down to 20, and the Rockets end up with a potential stud. There are, of course, injury concerns that are now being brought to light, which led to him sliding all the way down to 20. But Cam Whitmore has so much potential, and for being able to take a swing at 20, even if he doesn't work out, it's not a huge deal. Cam Whitmore's a player who has an insane vertical, he has some catch and shoot potential, he's extremely athletic, can get to the rim, looks like he can be a versatile wing, and adding him to that Houston Rockets young core seems just like an amazing move, and I really like the fit. I think he has the potential to be great on this Houston squad, and him falling all the way to 20, maybe he'll have something to prove. So look for Cam Whitmore to prove people wrong in Houston. I still can't believe he slid all the way down, but time will tell if it was a mistake letting him slide that far. And moving on to the next winners, these two may seem a little controversial given their team direction and where they pick these prospects, but I have the Hornets and Blazers as winners of this draft just simply because they landed the 2nd and 3rd best prospects in this draft. The Hornets, of course, drafting Brandon Miller with the 2nd pick, and of course, there's a lot of people upset they didn't draft Scoot Henderson over Brandon Miller. I personally would have probably gone with Scoot Henderson. I think he's the 2nd best player by a mile in this draft, but Brandon Miller still has a ton of potential, and of course he's a better fit next to LaMelo Ball. I don't know how Scoot Henderson and LaMelo Ball would have worked very well. We've seen 2 guard lineups in the past not really work out super well, so I get the rationale in picking Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller, of course, has the potential to become a star versatile wing. He has a ton of offensive potential, being able to shoot the ball well, has the tools to be a good defender, and these are all the tools that we've seen teams value that typically lead to star wing players. I still think it's a very solid draft pick, and they ended up getting Nick Smith at pick 27, who was one of the highest ranked prospects coming out of high school. He has the potential to still be a scoring machine, I really like that draft pick. So when you combine the pick with Brandon Miller and Nick Smith, I still think the Hornets come out as winners. If Scoot Henderson becomes a star and Brandon Miller doesn't quite become that, it's definitely going to sting, but I get the rationale, so I'm not upset with the Hornets draft. As for the Blazers, they draft Scoot Henderson, and this is amazing just because, like I said, I do think he is the second best player in this draft. Playing alongside Lillard will be a little weird, but I still think they can play very well off each other. I think Lillard will be great off ball just because he can shoot the lights out. He has super extended range. I think the best way forward is to let Scoot Henderson handle the ball, let Lillard play off ball, and try to figure it out from there. They definitely complement each other a little bit. It'll definitely be weird having two smaller guards in the backcourt, but going forward, I can see it working out. I just don't understand the rationale of keeping Lillard, though, with Scoot Henderson if you're going to rebuild, but it seems like Lillard wants to stay, and the Blazers want to still kind of rebuild at the same time, so time will tell what will happen there. But I don't hate the draft picks. I still think they're winners because ultimately at the end of the day, they both ended up with the second and third best prospects, which is still a huge win for both teams. Moving on to the next winners of the draft, the Dallas Mavericks, who had a very sneaky good draft. They were able to trade pick 10 to OKC and dump Davis Bertans' contract in the deal, and they ended up getting pick 12 in return, so they only dropped down 2 spots, get rid of a bad contract in Davis Bertans, and they still ended up drafting Derek Lively, who many believe they still would have ended up picking anyways with pick 10. He's a center who looks like he'll fit the Mavericks very well. He's gotten a lot of comparisons to Tyson Chandler. He looks like he can be a real rim protector and has a ton of defensive potential. He seems like he'll be really good on the pick and roll, rolling to the basket. He's very athletic. There's still room to be grown offensively for him, but I really like this fit in Dallas, and he'll be able to grow, and he'll definitely get a ton of playing time right away with Dallas having a hole at center. And Dallas also trades for pick 24. They take on Rashawn Holmes' contract, and they get pick 24 and they draft Maxence Prosper, who seems like he can be a real defensive wing that can help the Mavericks right away. And overall, this just seemed like a win for the Mavericks. They get pick 24. All they had to do was take on Rashawn Holmes' contract, which is not awful. He'll also provide some front court help. And they get rid of Davis Bertans' awful contract while adding a really intriguing prospect in Derek Lively. So the Mavericks had a very good sneaky draft. And the next winner that I see a lot of people not talking about a whole lot, the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz drafted Taylor Hendricks at pick 9, and Hendricks out of UCF looks to be a potentially valuable 3-and-D wing who has some scoring upside. And in a league that values 3-and-D wings more and more over the past few years, Hendricks seems like he can be a really good pick and play a role for the Utah Jazz. He'll definitely have a chance and ample playing time, and I'm excited to see if he'll be able to develop in Utah. He's shown some ability off the dribble to score a little bit. There's a little bit of potential there. He'll definitely need to refine his offensive game, but I definitely think there's potential there. They also drafted Keontae George at 16, who seems to be a little bit more of a boom or bust prospect, but he has shown scoring potential and is pretty good value at pick 16, so I really like this pick for Utah as well. They also drafted Bryce Sensabaugh late in the first round, who seems to be more of a pure scorer, but he'll definitely play a role on Utah and probably get some playing time. So overall, 3 really good prospects in the first round for Utah, and this just seems like a very good draft class from Utah overall. Moving on to the final big winner I have in this video, the Raptors select Grady Dick at pick 13, and that just seems like a great value pick. Being able to pick a scorer in Grady Dick who will definitely help this Raptors team that has struggled offensively. He's probably the best pure scorer in the draft, or at least one of the best pure scorers. He's a knockdown shooter from 3. He'll be able to score from all over the court, and that's something the Raptors really lacked last year. I believe on the draft broadcast they mentioned they were 28th or something along those lines from like 3-point land, and adding a player like him who can just score the ball at will definitely be huge for this Raptors offense that struggled a lot last season. And at pick 13, just once again, great value, so I really like this pick from the Toronto Raptors. Moving on to the losers of this draft, there weren't a whole lot of losers, at least in my opinion. There seemed to be a lot of teams that had really great drafts, only a couple teams that seemed to have lackluster drafts. So it feels like I'm being a little nitpicky picking these teams that were supposed losers. But the first loser of the draft I have is the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic looked like they could do a ton of damage with picks 6 and 11 in the draft, And with pick 6, they drafted Anthony Black, who some saw as a little bit of a reach. Anthony Black seems to be a really good defensive guard who has really good playmaking instincts, but doesn't really excel at anything too great offensively. So there's just worry that there's not a lot of potential there, but a lot of people think he'll be a really good role player. Just some people are upset that that's your pick at pick 6. A lot of people wanted to swing on someone who had a little bit more potential. After that, they picked Jet Howard at pick 11, and this was definitely seen as a huge reach. Jet Howard definitely has scoring potential, but he's not seen as a very good defender, and a lot of people didn't have him going in the lottery. A lot of people had him going towards the later first round, so he was seen as a major reach. So as far as Orlando goes, it just seems like they reached for both their prospects, which is a little unfortunate because they had 2 picks and really could have done a lot of damage. Another team I saw some people labeling as losers of the draft were the New Orleans Pelicans, just because they didn't do a crazy trade. They didn't trade up for Scoot Henderson like it was rumored. They didn't do any other crazy trades or do any win-now trades. They just ended up selecting Jordan Hawkins at pick 14, who looks like he's going to be a great shooter, but obviously this isn't a move that's going to really move the needle for the Pelicans. But I also get the rationale of drafting the player they felt would fit their system the best. They don't need to rush anything. They just need to hope Zion is healthy. So I don't necessarily see them as losers, but I could see why some people would label them as losers just for not making a win now move. And perhaps the biggest loser of this draft is not necessarily a team, but rather a player in Damian Lillard, who seems like he is going to be stuck in Portland for a rebuild, at least for now. Like I stated earlier, I think drafting Scoot Henderson was the correct move for the Blazers, which is why I don't have them as losers in this draft. However, Damian Lillard must be at least a little disappointed with the Blazers that they were not able to move that pick for an additional star to try and contend now. And it seems like Lillard is going to be stuck as a part of this Portland rebuild for the foreseeable future. Like I stated, I think the Blazers should try and trade Dame and go full rebuild mode with Scoot Henderson as your main building block, but it looks more and more likely that will not be the case, and it is rather unfortunate we won't be seeing Lillard on a contending team for at least the next couple of years, which is why many are actually labeling Damian Lillard the biggest loser of the draft. But those are our winners and losers of the 2023 NBA draft. Let us know what you think about our picks, and who do you think had the best and worst draft. As always, if you enjoy the video, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out a ton and helps the channel grow as a whole. Thank you for stopping by, and have a great one.